Daniel Child here. Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Full time at Goodison Park. Everton 0, Chelsea 0. Frustrated once again at Goodison Park. It wasn't exactly the disaster I feared it could have been. And given the history, recent history, even the past decade of history at that ground, it doesn't even come close to like the top 5 worst performances and days by Chelsea at that ground. However, I think there is a frustration, obviously, that top spot or the potential of top spot, even for a short period, was within our grasp. The winning run ends here. And I think in the context of the game, my biggest criticism is mainly looking at Enzo Maresca. And it's not going overboard. Listen, he's done a better than expected job. The idea, the fact that Chelsea are even going to be at worst 4 points off the top of the league at Christmas. Again, context and perspective and where we were at the start of the year back in August after the last time we failed to score in the Premier League against Man City. If you told me after that game where we'd be right now, where we'd be, I think 8 points clear of City with all their struggles and so close to the top, feeling much better about Chelsea in general. Of course, perspective is needed, but in the context and kind of just looking at the game in isolation, I do look at that second half in particular and ponder why Enzo Maresca only made 2 attacking subs. It seemed he took a long time to make those subs, and although when we look at the bench, arguably there weren't a flurry of options, which is a little bit weird given everyone talks about the strength of this squad, but I still think there could have been at least 3 more players who could have come on from an attacking point of view, at least in the subs he listed, that could have made a difference. I just think when you are struggling to score, when it's a really tight game, it's a real bore of a game, to be honest. And as a head coach, you aren't being proactive enough. And especially when you are Enzo Maresca, who I think has been credited, rightly so, for being a proactive coach at Chelsea so far. It just was a little bit strange why he didn't use the full complement of subs when maybe it could have made a difference. I'm not, listen, it's always easy in hindsight to go, if you brought on this player, if you did this at that moment, we absolutely would have got 3 points. But I just think, why not at least throw the dice, and roll the dice, and, put those players on and see if it makes a difference. So please do like, subscribe. Just want to say quickly, Alloy Collectors, it was actually the shirt they wore today, the metal home shirt, the away shirt for this year. If you want to get a almost late now, Christmas present for a family, friend, partner, loved one, whatever, or just for yourself to put it on your home studio, your desk, your shelf, your collectibles of Chelsea. I think it's definitely worth it. Alloy Collectors, made by proper football fans, officially licensed product too, and get yourself 15% off at checkout from Alloy Collectors for this shirt, for the home shirt, also retro shirts like the one behind me here from 98, and use the code SonOfChelsea at checkout to get yourself 15% off. So we knew that there was going to have to be some enforced rotation once again because of the injuries in defence, which are starting to pile up. The bad news that both Fofana and Badiashile were kind of out for longer than expected, which is a real shame. So I expected at least Tosin was going to start. I was a little bit surprised Axel Disasi started as well. So we had a back 4 effectively of Disasi, Tosin, Colwell and Gusto. No Renato Vega. Vega played, of course, the full game on Thursday against Shamrock. No Josh Achipom, who also played on Thursday. But I think it felt like a risk at the start of the game, especially having Disasi, not having Mark Cucurella. That's another big part of today, my analysis, because there isn't a lot to talk about, to be honest, because in the game there was not a lot that went on, unfortunately. And maybe the weather played a massive part, but you always feel like, I feel like I'm stood outside the Emirates on a fan cam when I start talking about the weather as a reason for a certain game going a certain way, because it does sound like a really silly excuse. But if you watch the game, the wind, the way the ball was moving, I don't actually think that helped Everton because they like to play a very direct game. So maybe some of their best attributes were limited as well. And maybe that actually helped Chelsea a bit more because we like to play more of a passing, slow possession football. It actually felt today like watching the Chelsea we didn't want to see in the summer and feared, of kind of that slow, repetitive, kind of boring football that is kind of more functional. There were times when Chelsea did rev it up in the first half. Nearly all of Chelsea's best moments came in the first half, and nearly all of them, I think, came through Pedro Neto, usually making quite a good run and trying to be forceful, trying to make something happen. of course, his execution wasn't there. And to be honest, the execution of a lot of Chelsea players just wasn't there today, especially in the attacking third, where we've been so strong for so long now. So they were going to have an off day eventually, and it kind of typically happens at Goodison Park because Everton, you've got to give them credit structurally under Sean Dyche. Defensively, they've got a lot better since the start of the season. And, even with players like Ashley Young, very old players in Premier League context, James Tarkowski, Brantwaite and Mikolenko, that's a very strong back four. They deal with aerial threats. They're very diligent. They're very precise with their tackling. They don't kind of go out of their shape very quickly. They don't press when they don't need to. Dyche is atypical in the modern Premier League. He doesn't very much conform to what a lot of coaches are doing, and I think that's why Everton are having some joy. And there were threats. There were times when Robert Sanchez, who I actually think probably was the best player on the pitch. I think he was Chelsea's best player because he made some big saves in the first half from Mangala. 2 saves from Mangala and 1 really big save at the start of the second half from Harrison, where he rushed out, but not in a bad way. He closed down the angle very quickly. So you got to give some props to Robert Sanchez, and really props to the defence of Chelsea, because even with that disruption, and you have Axel Disasi, Tosin, Colwell, and then add on to that Caicedo as well, they kept a clean sheet. That is what Sanchez and that back four, and Tosin, got to give so much credit to Tosin. A block he made from Ndiaye later on in the second half was, I hoped it would have been match winning, and we could have gone up the other end late and score, and it would have been an even bigger tackle. But for Tosin, who's had to bide his time to get some minutes at Chelsea, it felt like a really significant moment for him. And because I've given criticism to Disasi and Tosin, I can't honestly sit here and tell you it was a bad performance. But the two things I kind of want to elaborate on and delve into a little bit more. Firstly, on those subs, right? So in the second half, it takes 75 minutes for Nkunku and Madueke to come off the bench. I'm not sure why it took that long. Dyche made a similar judgment. He made his subs just shortly before Maresca did. But one of the things I've liked about Maresca is he is a very proactive, and reactive sounds bad, but he judges the game state, I think, very well, usually. And I think he understands that at times you need to be bold, you need to take action, even if sometimes it seems a little bit unfair, maybe on an individual player, because you need to change something tactically, because you need to up the tempo, you need to tweak something that Chelsea aren't doing well. So I felt, watching that first half, Jackson should score at least one of his chances. It was a really nice move, where one of those rare times when Chelsea looked like they're attacking best, where it was a nice fluid move. We got round the back of Everton on the right side. Palmer plays a ball across to Jackson. It's slightly behind him, but he probably should be doing better. He hits it straight at Pickford. And then also the header at the far post from a corner shortly after that Jackson could have put away. However, from there, Chelsea really struggled. They huffed and puffed, and our build-up was really disrupted. For the other reason I want to talk about, but you look at that bench, João Felix, Mark Guiu, who's off the back of a hat-trick, and Tyreek George. João Felix is obviously the main one here. Why are you not bringing him at least off the bench? I'm not João Felix's biggest fan. I don't think in a crutch situation he's the player I'm leaning on. However, you have him on the bench. You've used him off the bench before. And because our A type of playing, or kind of the way we've approached this game, the tools at our disposal haven't been working, maybe something different. Maybe a player who's going to sit in that pocket, not go out wide and hug the touchline, which we know Sancho and Neto do. Maybe someone who can play and assist and help someone like Cole Palmer. And then you've got Palmer, Felix and Nkunku all on the pitch, and maybe they can float and be a little bit more of a fluid kind of inside front three, and maybe be serviced by Caicedo and Enzo, who I think both of them had decent games for Chelsea, especially Caicedo, who, week in, week out, at times it feels like makes, almost match-saving tackles and interceptions that could lead to disaster for Chelsea. That's how important he is. Again, you bought Felix in the summer. I don't think he's a starting player. However, if he's not coming off the bench in these situations, and I even think Mark Guiu, who just scored a hat-trick, is probably in a great vein of form and confidence about himself, even for 5 minutes, stick him on there, see what happens. It kind of feels like whenever I see a coach do that, it always feels a little bit like an indictment on his subs, and kind of, I only trust Madueke and Nkunku, and I'm not going any further. Maybe he felt a sense of risk that Chelsea have lost this game at this ground for a number of years. A point isn't the worst result in these conditions with my makeshift kind of back four, or defence and kind of let's get out of here undefeated with a clean sheet. I'm not entirely sure, but you look even with our dominance in possession in terms of XG, it wasn't that high. And I just, again, that's kind of my criticism. Am I being unfair? Listen, as I said at the start of this show, the overwhelming evidence is that Enzo Maresca has judged the way he rotates the team, the way he deals with personnel, the way he makes in-game alterations really, really well for Chelsea. However, I think on this occasion, it was a little bit too soft and kind of safe from Maresca. And my other main point from the game is Marc Cucurella. The suspension of Cucurella was, I think, really damaging for Chelsea today. I've said before, and we spoke a lot about this post-Brentford, and I've said it before, him and Caicedo are kind of essential players for Maresca at the moment. I think they do so much important work, essential work to the way Chelsea function as a football team. And because Gusto was forced out to the left, you had Disasi on the right and Gusto inverting. I don't think Gusto always inverts brilliantly and seamlessly on the right. Inverting onto the left wasn't as great either. And that kind of forcefulness and that aggression and those small things that add up, as I keep on saying, it's an expression I've used a lot when I speak about Cucurella, but if you watch his performances, that's what they are for Chelsea. And I think losing him for this game was really hurtful because, especially down that left when Sancho was trying to make something click, from out wide, moving inward, and at times, yeah, sure, he would get some assistance from Gusto, but it's just not to the same level as a natural fullback, a natural left back would give you on that side. And as well, I also think the way, talk about those central areas which are so congested against a Sean Dyche team, I think Cucurella's movement, his seamless ability to move into those pockets and to maybe find positions in the box like we saw against Brentford, which really hurt them last week. I think Chelsea missed that. So it's good that we have Cucurella back for the Fulham game on Boxing Day. However, I think this was just more evidence and, very much a reflection of how vital Cucurella has become to Chelsea in a very short period of time. But I think that was also a reason why Chelsea just didn't look quite the same level as they have in the past 5 or 6 Premier League games, because I just think Cucurella makes such a difference in so many ways, defensively, offensively, psychologically against the opponent too, as we know. So that's a frustration, and I think, for Cucurella, he's probably kicking himself, and Maresca's probably regretting it and ruining it as well, because I think we definitely missed Cucurella as well. That's kind of the other big frustration of today, which we knew a week ago he wasn't available, but I think it became very apparent as the game went on, in my opinion. Again, it's frustrating because it could have been top of the league. It's not, but again, in context, the start to the season, going into Christmas, where we are, by no means a disaster, by no means a bad situation, but one where maybe, again, you're looking at it and going, is this proof that Chelsea aren't ready to go to that next level yet? Or is this just our classic Everton struggle? I'm not entirely sure. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please do drop me your questions for added time. I'm going to be recording that tomorrow before we hit Christmas. So all of that good stuff. Follow me across the socials, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.